All right, so it is 12 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is a rather unusual way for us to be having a meeting, and I'm going to ask for everybody's patience. It's going to be a bit of a slower meeting. I'll be using the roll call sheet often to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak. So just like a regular meeting, I'll be recognizing people. You'll be recognized from the chair for your opportunity to speak. And we'll go with it that way, just to try to make this as easy as possible for everyone. I remind everyone too that the audio is being streamed on YouTube, so this is being recorded. So the meeting's been called to order. For attendance, I'm going to go through the list. You'll have to unmute yourself to let us know that you are on the call. And this is how I will be looking for comments and voting throughout the meeting this afternoon. So starting with Councillor Dalgety.
I'm here.
Present.
Present. Confirm that you heard that, Chris?
There, I did. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ferguson. So you have to unmute yourself, Councillor Ferguson. So do we know if Councillor Ferguson's on the call? So I'm going to come back for Councillor Ferguson. I haven't confirmed that he is on the call. Councillor Gerard, are you on the call? If you could unmute yourself.
I'm on the internet, yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Holmes. You could unmute yourself.
I'm present.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Maiden.
Present.
Thank you, Councillor Maiden. Deputy Mayor Manelli. Deputy Mayor Manelli, are you with us? You'll have to unmute yourself to speak. Okay, I'm going to come back to Deputy Mayor Manelli. I think that Councillor Ferguson is there now. Is this right, Councillor?
Yes, I'm here. I can hear you.
Perfect. There, I can hear you now too. Thank you, Councillor. And just coming back to Deputy Mayor Manelli, are you on the call with us? Can you let us know? You have to unmute yourself to let us know that you're on the call. Okay, so Deputy Mayor Manelli, we're going to assume you are not on the call. If you are, please give a call or a text to Jean or to Ken so that we can confirm that you are there and help you get unmuted. Okay. So approval of the agenda. If you can unmute yourself.
Rick Manelli
has
left the meeting.
There you are. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we have our full council. Thank you very much, folks. I'm looking for approval of the agenda. To do this, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and say your name if you wish to move or second the approval of the agenda. So mover and seconder for that.
Councillor Maiden, move.
Thank you, Councillor Maiden.
Councillor Dalgety, second.
Thank you, Councillor Dalgety. And I'm going to go through the list for all those in favor. Councillor Dalgety.
Yay, in favor.
Councillor Ferguson.
Okay, you need to call back in.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah.
Councillor Gerard.
Mute yourself.
And I'm on again. The only question or thought that I have is it says called order at 11 a.m.
So that's just a typo. Thank you. I'm asking you if you approve the agenda. I'm looking.
That was my only concern.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Thank you. So a friendly amendment to make sure that that's correct. So Councillor Holmes, yea or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Maiden.
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Manelli. Deputy Mayor Manelli.
This is the clerk speaking. The deputy mayor just called me. He has to reconnect.
Okay. Thank you, Jean. Denzel first and Councillor Ferguson, approval of the agenda.
Yes.
Thank you. So the approval of the agenda is passes. If you have disclosure of a pecuniary interest or general nature thereof, you can bring that up at this time or when the item arrives on the agenda. I'll leave a moment if there is anything anyone wishes to declare at this time. Okay, seeing not, we'll move to the first report. And this is an amendment of the procedural bylaw. So this is a resolution to amend the procedural bylaw to allow for councils, local boards, and committees to hold electronic meetings in the event of a municipal or provincially declared emergency. Looking for a mover and seconder for this. So again, if you can unmute yourself and state your name as mover and seconder.
Denzel Ferguson will move.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder?
Councillor Mayden will second.
Thank you, Councillor Mayden. So we have a mover and seconder. I'm going to go to our clerk. Is there anything you might like to add before discussion? Madam Clerk?
Hi, this is Jean Harfield, the clerk speaking. This is simply just going forward with regulation from the province, which is allowing for municipalities to hold electronic meetings in the event of a municipal or provincially declared emergency. The language included in the amendment is copy and pasted directly from the legislation that the province passed last week, or 2 weeks ago rather. And it also includes that we may use any form of e-participation, so it's not holding us to just webcasting or teleconferencing.
Rick Manelli
has joined the meeting.
All right, glad to have you back, Deputy Mayor. Is there anything else you'd like
Thank
to
you.
add? Is there anything
Can
else?
you hear me?
We can hear you, thank you. If you could mute your call, that would be helpful. Perfect. And Madam Clerk, is there anything else you'd like to add about this procedural bylaw amendment?
Not at this point, no.
Thank you. So the clerk had indicated this is directly in response to legislative changes that the province has put in place so that we are able to have this meeting lawfully. If we don't pass this resolution and the following bylaw, the meeting ends at this time. So I'm going to go through the list. If there's any comments, you can make your comments at that time. Deputy Mayor Manelli, is it possible to mute your call? Thank you. So I'm going to go through. There's somebody who needs to still mute, not sure who it is. I'm going to go through the list of councillors. If you have a comment or question for the clerk, please ask your question or make your comment. If you have no comment, you can say pass. So again, I'm moving through the list alphabetically. Councillor Dalgety, any comment or question?
Councillor Dalgety, pass.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Ferguson, any comment or question on the resolution to change the procedural bylaw?
No change, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gerard?
Councillor Gerard, only question with regards to reading the agenda. Is there a way that it can be forwarded to page 6?
We're not on page 6 just yet. We're on pages 3 to 5. Are you meaning what's on the screen? You'd like to see what's on pages 3 to 5 on the screen?
Correct.
Okay. CEO Kelly is running that. I think he's working on it. Here we go.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Do you want a moment to take a look at that?
I will. I think I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'll check back before the vote. Councillor Holmes, any comments or questions?
Councillor Holmes here. I just had a couple questions. Is there any special provisions for in-camera, like, confidentiality, ensure you're in an area that no one else is listening? And the other thing is, I think listening to the podcast last night from Nigel Belchamber, I thought there was a recommendation that that they should all be recorded votes when they're on video.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. I'll go to our
Like,
clerk for comments on your-
confidentiality, ensure you're in an area that.
Do we have the clerk there to answer those questions?
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Councillor Holmes, for bringing that up. I think what Nigel Belchamber meant in terms of recorded votes is that they're recorded like we're doing with roll call. I don't think he meant as in under the Municipal Act. However, I can look into this further and report back to council, but I will have recordings of this. So if it is in fact that it needs to be a recorded vote, like how the traditional sense of how a recorded vote is, I will be able to go back and do that.
This is Ken. If I could chime in on that, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I took it the same way in terms of that podcast. I think we also have to appreciate that in a teleconference, you do actually have to do a roll call to go through in order to get the vote. And I think their commentary was basically in terms of trying to make sure that everybody is aware, because there's no actual hand going up that you could see in a council chamber. You have to basically go through a roll call and confirm. So it wasn't so much as each vote is a recorded, it's just there has to be a verbal demonstration to ensure that the vote is captured, as opposed to we're writing it all down.
Thank you, CEO Kelly. If we go back to the clerk, I wonder if you can speak to Councillor Holmes's second question or comment about if there is any direction on how to do the in-camera portions of electronic meetings.
There hasn't really been any direction clearly given from the province at this stage, just that if you amend your procedural bylaw, you have to state that if you're allowing it to be for both opened and closed meetings. In the amendment that I put forward, I do allow it to be for open and closed. The same provisions in the Municipal Act and in the Council Code regarding the handling of confidential information still applies, even if it is through e-participation.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm going to go back to Councillor Holmes. Does that answer your questions, or do you have any further questions, Councillor?
No, that answers my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Maiden, any questions or comments?
No comment.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Manelli, any comment or question?
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Manelli, did you have any comment or question about the electronic meeting resolution that we are discussing?
No comment or questions.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. And I just want to go back to Councillor Gerard. Now you've had a chance to look at the report. Was there anything you wish to ask a question or provide comment on?
No, Councillor Gerard, no, I'm fine, thank you.
Perfect, thank you very much. So now I'm going to go through the roll call. We have a mover and seconder, Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Maiden. And now I'm looking yay or nay in support of this resolution. Councillor Dalgety, yay or nay?
Councillor Dalgety, yay.
Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Ferguson. I think you have to unmute, Councillor Ferguson. Okay, we'll come back to Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Gerard.
Councillor Gerard, yay.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes.
Councillor Holmes, yay.
Councillor Maiden.
Councillor Maiden, yay.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Manelli. Yay or nay? Deputy Mayor Manelli. Deputy Mayor Manelli, are you still on our call?
I am.
There you are. Yay or nay in support of the
Yay.
Thank you. And Councillor Ferguson, we have you there now?
Councillor Ferguson, yay.
Thank you very much. So the resolution passes. For us to continue the meeting, we have to pass the bylaw to amend the procedural bylaw to include this provision. I'm looking for a mover and seconder for this.
Councillor Dalgety move.
Councillor Dalgety, thank you. And a seconder?
Councillor Holmes, seconds.
Thank you very much, Councillor Holmes. And I'm going to do the same thing with roll call here for a vote on this one. Assuming there's no further discussion. Actually, let me say it this way. Is there any further discussion? I'll give a moment for anyone to indicate they do have discussion. Okay, seeing no discussion, I'm going to go through the roll call again. Councillor Dalgety, yay or nay?
Councillor Dalgety, yay.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson, yay or nay?
Yay. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Councillor Gerard, yay.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes.
Yay, Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. Councillor Maiden.
Councillor Maiden, yay.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Manelli.
Deputy Mayor Manelli, yay.
Thank you. This also passes. We can continue with our meeting, folks. So the next item is number 3. So this is pages 8 to 11 in your agenda package, and it's regarding interest and penalties for municipal bills due to COVID-19. Is the treasurer on the call? Do we have Ms. Whitmarsh?
Yes, I'm here, Krista. Sorry, Mayor.
Thank you. I wonder if you could speak to the 2 recommendations that you have here, just to give context for councillors and any other comments that you might have before I look for comments and questions from the members of council.
Sure. So I would like to first speak to my recommendation regarding penalties and interest, which is no recommendation at this time, no waiving of penalties and interest at this time. The reason is, although I'm sensitive to
that you might have before I look for comments and questions from the members of council.
Our due date. Sure. Present. So I would like to first speak to my recommendation regarding penalties and interest, which is no recommendation at this time, no waiving of penalties and interest at this time. Prior to that are still in arrears, potentially. We have not issued any other bills
that you might have before I look for comments and questions from the members of council.
Our due date interest at this time, because that is it's more fair and equitable to those people that did pay their bills on time. However, I do have a caveat in my report that council could make a decision in that regard, to either eliminate penalties and interest for 2020 only, or to reduce the penalty rate from 1.25% per month to something else. I will have another more fulsome report coming out next week with regard to financial implications as a whole for the entire municipality, in terms of what we've seen so far. So there is an opportunity to have a further discussion about that at that time. I do know that municipalities within the county
do something else.
All over the place.
I will have another more fulsome report coming out next week with regard to financial implications as a whole for the entire municipality in terms of what we've seen so far. So there is an opportunity to have a further discussion about that at that time. I do know that I don't have anything coming up except for the next water billing. My recommendation at this time is that we extend the billing period. Normally, once we prepare the bills and get them in the mail, we give 30 days. At this time, I'm recommending extending that to 45 days.
And then the last piece is allowing the CAO and myself a bit of leeway in determining individual circumstances and making individual determinations about payment plans and penalty waivers. So that's kind of where my report, those are the two recommendations in my report, one about the due date, one about giving us a little bit more leeway in terms of making payment plans and making fee waiver adjustments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Whitmarsh. I think for the ease of conversation, I'm going to look just to recommendation number 1 at this time, and that's to extend the water and sewer billings from 30 days to 45 days. So just for the ease of conversation, we'll just look at that one recommendation at this point. And again, I'm going to go down the list. Councillor Dougherty, do you have any questions of conversation? I'm going to look first recommendation or concerns.
No, I'm okay with the first recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
No, I have no concerns.
Okay. Councillor Gerard.
Councillor Gerard, no concerns.
Councillor Holmes.
Councillor Holmes, no concerns.
Councillor Maiden.
Councillor Maiden, no concern.
Deputy Mayor Manelli.
I have no concerns.
Okay, thank you. And I'm now looking at the second portion of the recommendation. And this would be authorizing the CAO and treasurer to make case-by-case decisions, allowing us to be sensitive to those folks who may be having difficulty at this time. So looking at recommendation number 2, and again, any comments, questions, or concerns, starting with Councillor Dougherty.
Councillor Dougherty, no concerns.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
No concerns.
Councillor Gerard.
Gerard, my biggest concern would be the fact that there's a lot of people who are renting who are in discussion right now to not pay their rent. Landlords in Mississippi Mills are responsible for paying all of the water bills. The tenants do not get billed directly, so therefore I would make a recommendation that CAO and the treasurer take into account that landlords are going to be hit the hardest in this.
That's a very good comment, Councillor Gerard. Is there a comment back from the CAO or the treasurer?
No, that is a very good piece of advice, or I would definitely be keeping that in mind as I talk to people going forward. And I'm also going to be providing updates to council. If I see a very high number of calls or requests for relief, then I'm going to have to come back to council for a different recommendation.
Any comment from the CAO?
No real comments other than we don't really have any idea on, I guess, the magnitude or how to measure or to put a percentage on the number of people that we think will come through. But we will set up a regime in terms of, what are we looking for? What are we looking at in terms of someone's ability to pay? So is it people that, have lost their jobs and things like this? Or is it just anybody at all can request it? And as long as you request, you're granted. So we do have to do a little bit of work in terms of, are there qualifiers? But we also don't have any real idea in terms of the magnitude. And I think to put it in perspective, if we were to look at the current water billing period, I think we had less than $1,000 in arrears on about $500,000 in billing. So there's not a large amount of people who are not paying their bills just for the information of council. I don't know, Rhonda, if you want to add any more on that or clarify anything else, but I don't think we have a huge or a large delinquency problem. I wouldn't even think it's 0.5%. So.
That's correct right now, but we're not sure what will happen going forward. Those bills were issued prior to the state of emergency being declared in the province and then all the closures. So as we move forward, it may become more of an issue where council will need to have a different conversation about due dates and penalties and those kinds of things.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard, anything further? I think your comment was a good one about keeping in mind the position of landlords right now.
I believe just to be aware that landlords do get stuck with the water bills if the tenants are not paying, and that means in some cases multiple units that they'll be charged for. So I just want to keep that be made aware for the committee or for council.
No, it's a good point. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Holmes, any comments or questions on the second part of the recommendation?
No comments or questions, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Maiden?
Councillor Maiden here. I would echo the CAO's comments about having consistent guidelines for who is allowed leeway and who isn't, and would raise the question of reporting to council on the numbers and the cost over time.
Okay, good comment. Deputy Mayor Manelli, any comment or question?
My only comment is that if the CAO and treasurer decline somebody, will we be lobbied from members of the public about it? Hello?
No, I heard your comment. I'm thinking about how to respond to it. It's a good comment. And,
you know what I mean? And it'll put the CAO and the clerk in maybe, I don't know. That's just a comment.
I imagine that both the CAO and treasurer would act in a very sensitive way to anyone who may be having challenges. But your comment is right in that it's delicate. It is certainly delicate. I don't know if there's any further comment from the CAO and treasurer on that.
It's Ken Kelly. With regard to that, I do believe that yes, as people feel that they are deserving of the break, that they will actually be lobbying all councillors, with regards to decisions that are not positive or in their favor. So with regards to Councillor Maiden, yes, we do have to draw up some type of guideline in terms of what's going on. I have been involved in these things before, and I did find that at times what was being asked was onerous, and given what people may have access to and things like this, I'm not sure that everybody's going to be able to produce something like a notice of assessment or an ROE at the drop of a hat. So it is going to be very much a discussion with people to try and understand their circumstances. And we do have to appreciate that oftentimes the people we're dealing with here are not the type of people who keep large files or paperwork. And it is very much going to be judgment calls. And I do put that to you, that this is going to be judgment calls. We will try and maintain consistency, but oftentimes it's been my experience that we come down to judgment calls on these types of situations.
Did you have any further comments, Deputy Mayor?
No, I appreciate the explanation, and the judgment call is what it's going to be. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm looking now for a mover and seconder for the recommendation in its entirety. Is there a mover and seconder for the recommendation from the treasurer?
Councillor Maiden.
I'll move it.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we have Councillor Maiden and Deputy Mayor Manelli as mover and seconder. I'm going to go through the list if you have any final comments on the entire recommendation. Starting with Councillor Dalgety, any other comments or questions on the entire recommendation?
Councillor Dalgety, pass.
Councillor Ferguson?
This is the clerk, Jean Hartfield. Councillor Ferguson, his connection dropped. He's going to try calling back in.
Oh, okay, thank you. Councillor Gerard?
Councillor Gerard, no more comments at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes? Oops, we've got you muted there still.
Yeah, I'm here now. Councillor Holmes, no comments.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Maiden?
Councillor Maiden, no comment.
Deputy Mayor Manelli?
No more comments, thank you.
Thank you. And all over again for the vote. So starting then with Councillor Dougherty, yay or nay?
Councillor Dalgety, yay.
Is Councillor Ferguson back on the call?
If this is the clerk, I don't think he is yet.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gerard, yay or nay?
Councillor Gerard, yay.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Maiden, yay or nay?
Councillor Maiden, yay.
Deputy Mayor Manelli, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank
Deputy
you.
Mayor Manelli.
Thank you. And I'm just trying to see here if we have Councillor Ferguson back on. I don't see him just yet. Okay, so the vote passes as it is with the 6 present. Thank you very much, everyone, and I appreciate your patience. This is a bit of an onerous process that we're doing here, and everyone's doing very well. So that recommendation passes. That brings us to other and new business. We have 2 items there to discuss. The first is garbage tags and whether we're going to consider increasing the service to individuals at this time, or if we wish to keep service as is. Certainly some municipalities are changing their service levels and some are keeping things as they are. So this is our opportunity to decide what we would like to do in terms of that service level. I would go to our CAO for some comments on this and information to base our discussion.
Well, that's part of the dilemma here. We don't exactly have a great deal of information to supply on this, other than the collection contract is not structured such that the actual collector, so the company that's the actual collector, curbside, is not going to get paid more as such, but we will have an increase in our tipping fees. Tipping fees are $75 a ton is the going rate, and it does take a large number of individual bags to make up a ton of garbage, but in general, a bag would weigh no more than, I believe it's 22 kilograms or 50 pounds. That's kind of the general rule of thumb in terms of what would exceed what we would kind of take. In terms of how much this is going to cost, it's really going to depend on what people try and put out. And as we can tell from the number of interested residents that we had in this, there were a large number of people that felt that in the last pickup that they should have been able to put out more, that the community should have been, the municipality should have been more accommodating, and that we should have waived the bag tags. So this is not something where each and every household is going to exceed the limit, particularly at this point in time because we haven't done anything. But I do find that when we relax the rules in general, you do find more does go curbside. So what's going to happen is our disposal cost is going to increase. Now, the disposal cost is not the largest piece of our contract or of the collection service, but it is a component. And we would expect that this may not continue on for the full year, because basically what I've seen in my driving around in terms of what people had out, it really was basically advanced spring cleaning. So they're at home, and it's not so much that they're producing more garbage at home, but that they've decided that they're going to clean up around the house and are dragging things out and putting it to the curb that they probably wouldn't have normally because they didn't have the time. So I think we have what's a little bit of advanced spring cleaning, so it should kind of reach a peak. It should be something that's over in a few weeks' time, and then we kind of move on and garbage kind of normalizes again. So I'm not expecting the cost to be much in terms of like hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I also can't say it's only going to be 1,000 or 2,000.
Thank you for that. I will do the same thing, starting with Councillor Dougherty. Do you have any comments or questions to the information we've heard, or is there a motion you'd like to put on the floor?
I'll throw a comment in first, Councillor Dougherty. Some feedback I'm getting is the residents do not want to go where you purchase the tags when they're out, and so they see it as no option. to put an extra bag out. They can't buy the tags. That's the feedback that I've got from some residents.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ferguson, do we have Councillor Ferguson on the call?
This is the clerk, still not yet, but he's calling my cell phone right now, so I'll try to sort it out for him.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gerard, any comments or questions, or wish to put a motion on the floor?
Councillor Gerard, I actually, through the chair, have a question for the CAO. You were talking about tipping fees. I'm wondering what are, if recycling fees are more expensive, if that's something that we should possibly be encouraging the community to do?
Encouraging more recycling?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, just on this point, I mean, as we make it easier for people to throw out things in black bags, yes, I would expect recycling would decline. The Director of Public Works is on the line. I think he may be more familiar with the recycling cost component. I do believe it is higher, but I can't peg a number right now on what it is on either a per ton basis for disposal fees at the recycling center. Maybe the Director of Public Works can.
Do we have the Director of Public Works?
Guy Borgall here, Director of Public Works. Can you hear me, Krista?
Yep, we can hear you, Director. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Unfortunately, no, I don't have those numbers in front of me at the moment with regard to the recycling, but as the CEO indicated, usually when a community moves to more garbage being allowed at the curb, those recycling numbers diminish. If we are going to move forward to allow an amendment to the bylaw to allow more curbside waste to go out, we should definitely include in that media release that we encourage recycling to continue and to actually increase recycling, because there's no extra cost to us for the recycling as like to put it out to the curb, and we get money back from the Stewardship Ontario with respect to the amount of stuff we do recycle as a community. So we just have to be careful with the messaging and put out there as an educational piece that recycling is still highly encouraged, and anything that you can stay away from sending to any landfills is much appreciated.
Thank you for that comment.
Mayor Lowry, it's Ken again. Just one further thing, in terms of considering, trying to put some parameters around what we would be kind of be willing to accept or guidance to people. I don't think we should put ourselves in a situation where we haven't given people any parameters or guidance. So currently right now people are allowed one container. After that they have to have the bag tags for them. I don't see us putting an unlimited amount, but right now people could put out an unlimited number of containers for recycling, or an unlimited amount of recycling, and we have limited the garbage. I don't think we should move to an unlimited amount of garbage, but we could relax. So you could offer to, for a period of time as well, you could also put a timeline to this, allow people to deal with what they have or their cleanup. Now remember, I think the landfill passes are coming up soon, and that people can go to the landfill as well. So I don't think we want to throw the gate completely open, but I think we can probably offer some leeway. So I think it's a balancing act.
I'm trying to remember where we were. I didn't put a tick mark this time. That was Councillor Gerard. Was that your last comments through myself to the chair or to the CAO? Did you have anything you wanted to come back with? Any further comments?
Councillor Gerard, I guess my thinking was that recycling, once properly cleaned, could last or be held a little bit longer, and therefore if we are able to get communication out to the community, that possibly the community would reciprocate by keeping and adding more recycling to their instead of the garbage. But if there's not going to be a value, or if the cost is actually not going to be a value, I guess it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So at this time, I just, my answer has been questioned, or my question has been answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Holmes, any comments, questions, or motions?
Denzel Ferguson.
Oh, there's Denzel. Hi, Councillor Ferguson.
Good afternoon.
We'll come back to you in just a moment. We are
Has joined the meeting.
So, Councillor Ferguson, we're discussing the potential increase of services with garbage. And I'll come back to you for comments, Councillor Ferguson. I'm going to go to Councillor Holmes for any comment, question, or if you may wish to put a motion on the floor.
Councillor Holmes here. So I think we got good advice from CAO Kelly in regards to let's not throw the floodgates open, but I also understand where people are coming from in terms of wanting to do spring cleaning and maybe throw out some garbage. But I'm very cognizant of let's put the message out that recycle. And I would put a motion on the floor that for a period of 4 weeks, we allow maybe one extra bag of garbage per week.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor of one extra garbage bag per household for 4 weeks, and to partner that with messaging about the importance of recycling. Is there a seconder for that motion?
Councillor Gerard, I will second that motion.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Holmes and Councillor Gerard, thank you. Councillor Maiden, any comments, questions, or comments on the motion?
I just had a couple of comments. For example, other communities like Carleton Place, they do allow one extra bag.
Mm-hmm.
They are allowing it now. Kingston will allow up to 4 bags, but maybe they have bags of money too. And just to note to council that the hub and rebound are closed and not accepting anything, so that may add to the recycling as well. And I do support Councillor Holmes' motion, but I would amend it to say as long as the provincial emergency is ongoing, and to go back to normal once it's terminated.
So, Councillor Maiden, just for simplicity's sake, can you hold that amendment just for now? And I'll get comments from the last two, and then we'll come back to your amendment.
Will do.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Manelli, any comments or questions?
The only comments I have is that some municipalities sell the garbage tags in a local Circle K or Becker's, or they could be put somewhere where the community could access them too. That's just my comment. Okay, thank you for that comment. And then going back to Councillor Ferguson, hopefully you've been able to catch up in the discussion here. As I was saying, we were discussing whether to increase the services for garbage, and Councillor Holmes has put on the floor a motion to increase one extra bag per household for 4 weeks. Any comments or questions you have about increasing garbage service?
Yes, I apologize. I didn't hear all the narrative. However, I wonder what the situation is, because at one time we had a lot of extra garbage tags within the municipality that people had returned, and I don't know whether that supply has been used up or not, or whether it's to our advantage just to go carte blanche across the table and give everyone other bag. I can go either way, but depending on the seriousness of it, certainly make some available. I don't have an issue with that.
Okay. The Director of Public Works, are you still on the call?
I am.
Do you have any sense of Councillor Ferguson's comments, if there is a lot of those tags still floating around?
No, we don't really keep track of the ones that haven't been used after the given year has gone by. We obviously issue them as per our bylaws during the course of the year, as with the dump passes to the Kavanaugh Road site. But we don't track them individually except at year end, and then we move on to the next year.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to go back to Councillor Maiden. You had an amendment you wish to put forward?
Yes, basically a friendly amendment to Councillor Holmes' motion to suspend or to allow one extra garbage bag per pickup for the duration of the provincial emergency, rather than the 4 weeks as suggested. And I just wanted to, can I add a comment as well?
Of course.
Part of the issue here is that we don't want people necessarily going out of their homes when they're supposed to be staying at home just to get something like a garbage tag. And what I'm hearing from some of the rural residents is that people are dumping garbage, extra garbage in ditches, and we don't necessarily want that blowing around and, contaminating things either. So those are a couple of my considerations. Thank you.
So we have an amendment proposed. Is there a seconder to the amendment to strike 4 weeks and allow the extra bag to continue for the duration of the provincial state of emergency? Is there a seconder for that?
Councillor Gerard, I actually seconded the first motion, and I'm fine to withdraw and second this motion as considered too.
Sorry, can you say that again, Councillor?
I was the seconder on Councillor Holmes's motion.
Yeah.
I'm at this time willing to withdraw my second and support this amended motion.
So I don't need you to pull your support for the original motion. I need a seconder for the amendment that Councillor Maiden has proposed. Would you like to be the seconder to that?
I will be the seconder for Councillor Maiden's, yes.
Perfect, thank you. So we have Councillor Maiden and Councillor Gerard. The amendment being to strike that it be 4 weeks and allow an extra garbage bag for the duration of the provincial state of emergency. My own comment on this is we have no idea if this is going to last, a few weeks, or if this will last, longer than that. It could always be revisited and extended if it's felt like the right fit for residents and the municipality. Not knowing how long this is going to last makes me wonder if we should be extending in pieces rather than having it open-ended. But I will go through the list again for comments on specifically the amendment, starting with Councillor Dalgety.
No comments. I'm okay with that.
You're okay with the amendment? Okay. Councillor Ferguson, comments on the amendment?
Yeah, I can live with it.
Okay. Councillor Gerard.
Councillor Gerard, I support the amendment, yes.
Okay. Councillor Holmes, actually, I'm just looking for comments on the amendment. We're not voting just yet. So Councillor Holmes, any comments on the amendment?
My only comment would be, I would prefer actually to do it in segments, because if we did it for a month, we'd get a handle on how much garbage is being put out, and is there a decrease in recycling, because it's easier to put it in a garbage bag. But I'm willing to live with the amendment as it is, because we could always go back and change it.
Yeah. Councillor Maiden, any comment on your amendment?
No, not really.
Okay. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Manelli, any comment on the amendment?
My only comment is that it is going to double price of our tipping fees for the next. If the emergency stays in for 8 months, is our tipping fees going to double?
Yeah, that's a good comment. Any further comments from you, Deputy Mayor?
No.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm looking for a vote of yay or nay only for the amendment. So yay or nay, Councillor Dalgety.
Councillor Dalgety, yay.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, Ferguson.
Councillor Gerard.
Councillor Gerard, yay.
Councillor Holmes. I just need to get you unmuted there, Councillor Holmes. There you go. Councillor Holmes, yea or nay?
Yay.
Thank you. Councillor Maiden, yea or nay for the amendment?
Councillor Maiden, yay.
Deputy Mayor Manelli, yea or nay for the amendment?
Nay.
Okay, thank you. So the amendment holds. So the amended motion is then that we would partner messaging about encouraging recycling, an increase in recycling, and allowing an extra bag per household for the duration of the provincial state of emergency. I'm going to just give a pause. Any final comments on the amended motion? I'll give a pause if anyone has a final comment.
Councillor Holmes here. I have one final comment.
Okay.
I would request that we have some costing done within 4 weeks or so to tell us exactly where our tipping fees are in response to, you know, our concerns that people might put out more garbage and less recycling.
Okay. Is there a comment from the CAO or the Director of Public Works that'd be doable in 4 weeks?
Director of Public Works here. Yes, that's pretty doable.
Okay.
Just a CAO, well, in 4 weeks, we might not have, it does quite depend on when we get the actual tipping slips from the contractor and whatnot. It may be slightly off of 4 weeks, but we should be able to provide something within, say, a 4 to 6 weeks timeline to say, okay, this is what this is a decent picture that illustrates what has happened. That's all for now.
Is that reasonable, Councillor Holmes?
Yes, that's very reasonable.
Okay. Any other final comments on the amended motion?
Councillor Dalgety?
Councillor Dalgety.
Through the chair to the clerk, can you please reread the part about promoting the recycling?
Hi, the clerk here, Jean Harfield. So the actual motion, I have it as more of an action item that staff to include messaging to promote recycling. If we wanted in the actual motion, it could be that staff directs, or that council directs staff to permit 1 extra garbage bag per pickup location for the duration of the declared provincial emergency, and that council directs staff to include messaging on the promotion of recycling. Does that cover what everyone was looking for?
Councillor Dalgety, is that okay?
I think she broke up in the last part of it.
Okay. Not councillor, excuse me. To the clerk, could you repeat that for us?
Sure. I have that council directs staff to permit 1 extra garbage bag per pickup location for the duration of the declared provincial emergency, and that council directs staff to develop messaging that promotes recycling and the extra pickup or garbage pickup.
That's fine, thank you.
That's okay? Who's not muted just right now. There we go. Any other final comments on the amended motion? Okay, seeing not, I'm looking for a vote then on the amended motion as the clerk had just read. Councillor Dalgety.
Councillor Dalgety, yay.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Councillor Ferguson, yay.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Councillor Gerard, yay.
Councillor Holmes.
Councillor Holmes, yay.
Councillor Maiden.
Councillor Maiden, yay.
Deputy Mayor Manelli.
Nay.
Thank you. Motion is carried. And that brings us to the second piece here under other and new business, and that's the status of the Municipal Emergency Control Group. I think the fire chief is on the call. Am I correct? I think he's on. Oh, there he is. Did you want to provide any comment, or should I begin?
If you could start, please.
Sure, I'll do that, and then I'll pass it over to you. So we had a meeting by teleconference this morning, and our oh, my page is gone. There we go. And our medical officer of health for the Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark Health Unit, that's Dr. Paula Stewart, was able to join us, and she was quite generous with her time. She had indicated that things really exploded, was her word. Looking at my notes here, there was an explosion of confirmations in our health unit area, so that's Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark. Some being related to travel. She did indicate as well that perhaps some of the confirmations or the explosion of confirmations is also related to the testing turnaround time. We're having our tests in this area going to Ottawa and Kingston, so the turnaround time is now only 1 to 2 days, so it's much faster than it had been. So the health unit has been working with Country Haven. They were working with them Saturday and Sunday. There was some challenges with messaging. They have to have ministry approval of their messages, and that didn't happen quite as quickly as they would have liked. So some of the messaging didn't come as quickly as they would have wanted to. But she did say that it's very...
Denzel Ferguson.
Hi, Councillor Ferguson. But our medical officer of health
has left the meeting.
Did indicate that this is a very clear indication that the virus is here. There's probably others with mild symptoms who may have already spread it to others in the community. She indicated that what's next is really hard to say. It's a bit of a wait and see situation. But she did underline that it is really critical to continue practicing social distancing, as we're doing with this meeting, and to encourage residents to do so as well. The line of communication was really, I think, quite good between myself and the medical officer of health once we were able to connect this weekend. Just looking at the rest of my notes here. She also did indicate, again, that the concern, and she's been saying this for some time now, that those with mild symptoms or lesser symptoms are potentially affecting others in the community and not knowing so. And she did underline that twice. Another message that she had shared was regarding the new provincial order that gatherings must be of 5 or less. Her indication that is, if we're taking this seriously, there should be no gatherings. We should not be gathering together. Her words was that there is no magical number about size, that there should not be gatherings. She was really quite clear on that. So it was quite helpful to get her update on the situation there. And in terms of overseeing the outbreak at Country Haven, they're certainly working very well with the staff there, by all indications that she had provided, and they can't put a lid on this, and I think that was her words as well. We can't put a lid on it at this point. It's really about mitigation, and very much about encouraging people to distance themselves and to make the best choices they can to keep everyone safe. So that was an update I wanted to provide about Dr. Stewart's comments. I'll turn this over to the chief in a moment, just to discuss about making sure that all of council understands if we were to, or if I was to make the decision to declare an emergency, what that looks like. And I did reach out and was able to just speak with each of you last night individually. my personal position on this, and the reason I haven't declared until this time is this isn't our emergency. It's a healthcare emergency. It's the lead it continues to be the health unit. We've all seen the information from POC. They had indicated a few reasons where municipalities might declare. I don't have the most recent number of municipalities that have declared in Ontario, but it's a staggering number. That's, if it's not at 200, it'll be very soon. It'll be at 200 municipalities in the province. And it would seem that most of them are making that declaration as a demonstration of solidarity or support of the provincial declaration. And it's also a statement of the severity, the seriousness of the situation. And until this past weekend, I didn't feel that this was a decision that I was ready to make. With the outbreak at Country Haven, and also the change from the Solicitor General in looking to the municipalities to help enforce the Quarantine Act, I feel like those are two pieces that do change this situation quite a lot. So I am very seriously considering that a declaration may be the right thing to do at this time to help get that message to folks.
Ferguson.
To help get that
Has joined the meeting.
To help get that message to folks that this is really, the time is now to take this seriously. If they're not, and those people who are, I think would probably appreciate the gesture as well. So I offer that just to help you know where I am with the decision. And I wonder if, just before we open it up for any questions or comments that anyone may have, I would like to turn this over to the chief, the fire chief, just for indication on what a declaration looks like, what those steps would be for members of council who may not be entirely familiar. Of course, we had a meeting last week where there's concerns about the emergency plan, and we have all agreed that that'll be looked upon and updated as needed when the time comes. But I wonder if, Chief, if you could speak to the emergency plan and any things you feel should be underlined for council's understanding, and then we'll turn it to council for any questions they may have.
Okay, so if we start with the act itself, it says that the head of a council of a municipality may declare that an emergency exists in the municipality or in any part thereof, and may take such action to make orders as he or she considers necessary and are not contrary to law to implement the emergency plan of the municipality to protect property and the health, safety, and welfare of the inhabitants of the emergency area. So as head of council, you have the ability to declare an emergency for our municipality. The steps to declare an emergency are the completion of a form that is completed and signed by the mayor in accordance with the act, and it would be sent to Emergency Management Ontario, signifying that we've declared an emergency. From a process perspective, we would enact the plan. As you know, we've already taken steps to enact our Municipal Emergency Control Group to review the pending flood that could possibly affect our municipality and prepare for the spring. And if we went to the next step, we would actually invoke the emergency plan, at which the emergency control group would then be in a position to deal with any of the health-related issues as signified through the declaration of the emergency form that would be sent to the province.
Thank you very much, Chief. And just before I open it up, is there anything that you may like to add to this, Ken?
The only thing I'd add really is it's in terms of the declaration of emergency, I think there is an issue around solidarity and other levels of government, particularly the province that has declared. And we also have the issue most recently where the province has issued a direction that the Quarantine Act, or expectation is that municipal officers will be able to enforce that. And that in and of itself, I think is an issue. And the declaration of an emergency, I think, would help in the communication of that. In trying to interpret that piece or that direction, that letter that came out from the province, our solicitor, Mr. Fleming, has said, you really want to focus not so much on the aggressive ticketing aspect of that, but you want to focus on the communication aspect. And I think he's right on that point that, what we would be intending to do if we were to be out, actually trying to enforce the Quarantine Act or trying to get people to self-isolate and stay home, is that we would be taking a communication approach. And I think the declaration of the emergency would actually assist in that communication because it would demonstrate, the status or the level of importance that we think that this situation has caused and our role in it. So I think from my standpoint, I think a declaration is really a statement for communications, and as opposed to what it garners us in terms of ability to take action. Just on that point.
Right, thank you. So I do have the notes from the conversations I had with each of you individually yesterday. A lot of it was specifically on communication and ensuring that there's no gaps, and that an important decision, an email that's showing a decision, that it maybe be flagged so that in the sea of emails that are in your inbox, which ones are the ones to really pay attention to. But I certainly was hearing that, simplicity of message, that council knows before something goes out to the public, consistency, no gaps, the daily updates that the CAO are providing from PEOC seem to be appreciated. And let's see. And there were a few questions about the emergency plan as well. So I'm going to again start, Councillor Dalgety, start with yourself. And if you have any questions about what this would look like, or any other comments that perhaps that you and I didn't have a chance to discuss or that you'd like the group to hear, I'd like to give you that opportunity to make a comment or ask any questions of myself or the chief or our CAO.
Just a couple of comments, Councillor Dalgety here. In my perspective, I'd like to be as prepared as possible, and in these circumstances, in this magnitude, be as prepared as possible and hope for the best is what we can do. The only other thing I threw out there, like I'm in favor of this, Mayor Lowry, and the only other thing I threw out there, would council like to have a half-hour meeting maybe once a week, just a recap of the week as we go through this.
Okay, Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, thank you. I agree with the statement of the CAO in reference to communication. This should really be the statement as opposed to an enforcement, as we're probably not going to get into, I hope. But I think the communication aspect of it is paramount.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Gerard?
Thank you, Councillor Gerard. I guess I'm curious if I could direct a question through the chair to the CAO. Was what you're saying that we as our staff are going to be the ones who are going to be enforcing the isolation, or would that be left to the police or other jurisdiction?
It's actually my understanding, and Chad, you might also want to chime in on this, but I may be, this is relatively new. This direction came out on Friday, and like I said, over the weekend we were trying to get clarifications and get an understanding. My understanding is anybody who has any role in enforcing Provincial Offences Act orders is potentially on our staff that we put to for the enforcement. So that would include somebody like the chief building official as well. The municipal enforcement officers that we have are contracted out, so obviously they would be brought into the picture. And I'm sure you're aware that that's Jim McBain's company that would be part of this. And we do have a contract as well, so we also have to keep that in mind. We have about 30 hours a week with regards to the contracted services that we have. So would this actually, would we divert time from existing municipal enforcement, or would we be incurring additional hours? So there is that aspect. But yes, the idea is that the municipal enforcement officers would be enforcing the Quarantine Act, not so much the OPP. And the OPP would be getting involved because we wouldn't have the authority to arrest anybody. Obviously, the municipal enforcement officers, their authority hasn't been increased, but they would be able to ticket and things like that. And as well, as I was saying, the emphasis should be on communication and education. So, Pat, I don't know if there's anything else, but I will appreciate, I'm just going to qualify on this issue. Everything we say really could stand to be corrected because it is so early in the direction that's come from the province on this.
Through you, Madam Chair, the only comment I would have further to CAO Kelly's comments would be that if we were going to have staff actually do this level of enforcement, we would have to come up with a policy and procedure for the worker protection to ensure that the people that are supposed to be in quarantine have the appropriate level of necessary personal protective equipment so as we don't actually injure any of our staff.
Mm-hmm. That's a good comment. Thank you, Chief. Councillor Gerard, did you have any further comments or questions?
I guess my question would be to the chair. At this point, has the Leeds and Grenville Lanark response plan been activated? Would they're at some point going to be giving out more information to the public?
Do you mean the health unit?
Yes.
What information would you be meaning?
Well, we're talking about enforcing isolation. Would that information not also be brought forward, or is the health unit not actually giving that information out to the public right now?
About enforcement? So the enforcement issue, that's coming through the Solicitor General. That's coming from the province. And it's quite new. I think I circulated it to council on Saturday evening, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a lot of questions about what that would look like. I think when you take a look at what's coming out of the media, there's a capacity issue with police being able to do it all. And I think that's why the province and therefore the Solicitor General is looking to see if municipalities can step up to help with any of this enforcement pieces. But this is a Solicitor General direction. It's not from the health unit.
So again, Councillor Gerard, to the chair. So what you're saying is that you would like us to actually call the emergency or with regards to the state of emergency so that we can use, our municipality can actually enforce what's coming down from the government?
Oh, no. So, and just to be clear, it's not a decision of council, it's a decision of the head of council to declare a state of emergency. I just wanted to make sure we had this opportunity to discuss together. So if there were questions, if I do declare that those have been, you've had an opportunity to ask those questions before we get into that situation. The province, through the Solicitor General, provided I guess some direction would be the way to say it, that they're looking for assistance in enforcement of the Quarantine Act and enforcement of other orders. It's not clear yet if it's there's a lot that's not clear about it yet because it just did come out to us over the weekend as I shared with council. So this isn't necessarily tied to it in my thinking and when I'm considering the declaration, but it would be helpful for the communications to our residents, I think, if they understood that these pieces are not to be taken lightly. And I think myself and the CEO brought up the enforcement piece because it's a bit of a moving target, and there may be an expectation of our involvement. And I think where I have gotten with my own thinking while I'm considering the declaration is that it really adds a weight to the seriousness of the situation in my mind in those communications. If not only it's a state of emergency in the province, but here in our own community, we're recognizing it as that as well. So I don't know if that helps, Councillor.
I guess my biggest concern is that I would hope that our biggest reason for creating this or calling this would be for the benefit of the municipality. And I'm curious as to how or when are we actually going to reach out and talk to our community with regards to staying calm, staying home, and being helpful. Like calling a state of emergency is not doing anything internal. We're basically we're giving out the overall controls elsewhere. So I'm hoping that we as a municipality can help to look after our own people.
I think this is a step towards doing that, and certainly the staying calm, staying home message is one that I've been sharing for over 2 weeks now, and the municipality has been as well through the website, through the news feed, online. And I think this helps perhaps focus some of that communication and elevate the weight of what we have in front of us. And as Dr. Stewart said this morning, it's a bit of a wait and see. And while we're waiting and seeing what's going to happen, we really need to make sure people are doing the things they need to be doing to keep themselves safe and keep the community safe.
So your feeling then is to call the state of emergency because that's going to force these people to come in to comply with this?
I don't have, and nor does the municipality have an ability to force anything. But as the Solicitor General had reached out in that communication I had shared with Council, they are looking for municipalities to perhaps help with the enforcement of the Quarantine Act that has been most recently put in effect.
Maybe if I could add to that, Mayor Lowry, it's not a mandatory component, and again, I can't emphasize how much this is. This issue is really new and just evolving. But the guidance we've gotten is that this is something that you can choose to do in terms of the enforcement aspect. And whether you issue tickets. The other thing that we have to appreciate is the courts are not really taking on new business, I'll say that, at this moment in time. So, your ability to issue tickets, they're not going to get filed in court until this is pretty much over. So really, this is a communication effort from the aspect of trying to deal with the quarantine. And we really wouldn't be getting to that point of arresting people. That's not what this is about. And maybe that's something that we should just say, it's not really part of the declaration, but it is part, like I said originally, of the communication aspect of when we are talking to people. And I would like to emphasize that we've been doing an awful lot in terms of communications, in terms of putting material out there, and also monitoring social media and trying to correct misinformation, directing people to the public health, directing people to where they can get information, because that is part of what we're doing right now. And also linking up to other groups like United Way, which is also getting some additional funding to do things, and trying to identify and assist the food bank in terms of making or facilitating things that they can do. So, I think we've been doing a lot in terms of what our role is. And we've actually been I believe you were copied on some emails earlier to Dr. Paul Stewart that I had sent, asking him and pleading with them to please try and clarify what the municipal role is, because people are getting very confused about what that role is.
Thank you. I guess as a counselor, I'm very confused as well, because though I received the information that is being sent down from the province or from the Canadian government, I feel that we as a council are not sharing that information with all of the residents. Sure, we can put it out on Facebook, but we have a lot of residents who don't have Facebook. I still have dial-up. We still have dial-up at the township office. I feel that we still are short a step. There's some other people in this municipality that are not being told what has to be done.
So, Councillor, in response to that, it was at least a week ago I sent something to all of Council. Actually, it might be 2 weeks ago now. A week, I don't know, it all is melting into one. Maybe it's just a week ago. That's really the job of us as community leaders, is to, I've been saying this to everybody who will listen, work the phones, call your neighbors, call people who don't have social media, call people who are not, can't rely on great internet at home. Make sure that they're getting these messages and make sure that they're doing okay. Because there are lots of organizations that have activated and they're there to help. The United Way table is doing great work here in Lanark County, but in all of Eastern Ontario. But that's our jobs as community leaders, to make sure people are doing okay. Connect with groups, encourage the people that to do the same. We're all at home and looking for things to do anyway. So what better thing to do than call your neighbors and make sure that they're all right. And then we have that opportunity. The more dialogue that's occurring in the community, the more likely we will be able to identify someone who may need help that isn't getting it, who may not be doing well with their mental health right now. There's a lot of things going on. And the more that we as community leaders reach out and encourage others to do the same, I think that's the gap that perhaps you're feeling is in place. And I'd encourage every member of council to keep working phones, call people, and if you haven't, please start. Okay. Councillor Holmes.
Councillor Holmes here. I have to agree. I think it's really important to get the communication part about the Quarantine Act. I would really hesitate to take a heavy hand, and I would want to know. I really need more clarification on how municipal employees would assist with enforcement. And as Chad was saying, we have to also make sure that they're being kept safe. So I would be very cautious on going forward with that and try to get the message out. In terms of reaching out to people, certainly I think all of us have been getting phone calls and whatnot, but I'm wondering, in order to be able to be more efficient, does the municipal office have names and phone numbers that we could be using to reach out with? Because it's difficult sometimes to reach out to people, particularly if we really don't have their phone numbers and whatnot. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Councillor Maiden.
Councillor Maiden here. Just observation, our biggest neighbor, the city of Ottawa, has declared a state of emergency. Just to comment on that, because people come and go from there every day. A question for perhaps the CAO. Is any federal or provincial funding contingent upon our declaring an emergency? That's one question. And in reading the provincial news media and so forth, and it sounds like we might need to be prepared to offer up to the province or to the health unit some of our community facilities. And I think that would also be contingent on a state of emergency as well. And just wanted to get a comment perhaps from the Director of Planning on the use of bylaw officers and building inspectors and so forth for enforcement. And are they actually ready for that right away? That's all I have.
Do we have the Director of Planning on the line?
Hi, I'm here. Yes, can you hear me?
Hi there. Yes, we do.
So, no, we have not had that fulsome conversation yet, and it's something that we should do if council has any interest in deploying our resources. Right now, I can tell you that we are down to one inspector. Our CBO is working from home, and one of our inspectors is on self-isolation because he was recently out of the country. So I would tell you, if the expectation was that we were going to use our internal building staff to provide this service, we are not at capacity to do so. Next week might be a different story, but our staff are certainly not trained or adequately prepared to do that eminently. So we would like to have some training and some clear expectations and guidelines on how they would be responding to this. Now, that said, of course, Chad, too, Chief Brown, does have enforcement officers on his staff as well, so we would probably try and implement something across the board so that there's consistency in the operation. We have been in touch with Mr. McBain from MLES Service, who's indicated that his staff are fully operational at this point. They have not shut down due to the state of emergency, and that they are available for us to call on them should we choose. So if this is something that council wants to do within the very near future, I would suggest that we call first and foremost to our MLES partners to provide the service before looking in-house. But again, that depends on the expectations of council and what type of delivery of service you're looking for.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Manelli.
I think there was a couple of other questions in there, Mayor Lowry, from Councillor Maiden.
Okay.
Okay. Just one other thing, I don't know if you actually saw my email pop up just then, but while the Director of Planning was talking, we just got another email talking about enforcement and a 1-800 number that's been opened up and things like this. So folks, I mean, this really is evolving extremely fast. And I'm not going to, I hear what the Director of Planning is saying in terms of training and things like that. I'm not saying that the province has thought this completely through about the training that people would have at this moment in time and asking them to step up and do something that they are not trained for. I'm not sure that that's, was part of their thinking. I think they are simply looking at the OPP being overwhelmed because there's so many people basically telling on their neighbor, and it's a lot of investigative resources. And this really is about identifying. So say public health gets a call, public health triages it. We get a call to go out and investigate. We go out and investigate, determine that would there be a ticket issued or what has to happen, or is there arrest in order? And that would be where the OPP is getting involved. So all of these things have not been figured out. It may take a considerable amount of time, and I can't emphasize enough that the direction that we've gotten so far is that this is, it's not mandatory. It is something that the municipality can decide to do or not to do. Back to Councillor Maiden's two other questions. Is there any funding that's contingent on declaring an emergency? It's our understanding, and it was in some of the questions from the Provincial Emergency Operations Center, that at this moment in time, there's no funding that comes into play because you do this. So we don't believe there's any provincial or federal funding at this moment in time for that. It doesn't say that if we decide to do extra activities such as enforcement, that we can try and recoup at some later date. But I haven't heard anything on that. But at this moment in time, there's no funding that's contingent on that. And I think your other question was, do we expect to be offering up community facilities? And that was one of the specific questions we asked Dr. Paula Stewart, the medical officer of health, on our call this morning. And it was, what are you expecting of the municipality? And kind of what's going to be, I guess, the trigger that when it gets to that point, that we will be asked. So is it a number of people that are sick or a number of facilities that are overwhelmed? When should we expect to get that call? And she couldn't really offer anything hard and fast other than to say, they're working on it and hoping that it doesn't get to that point. But she understood in the conversation about declaring an emergency and the reasons why and why not. So I'll leave it at that.
Was there anything further, Councillor Maiden?
No, that was very complete. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And apologies for jumping over. You had questions that I hadn't noted there. Now on to Deputy Mayor Manelli.
Thank you. Of course, protection of the staff is our number one concern when it comes to them doing the enforcement. I think evidence by visual evidence and maybe even video recording where they don't get involved with the actual person and use the evidence for a later date, hopefully. But our staff is, the protection of our staff is paramount. And I'm wondering about a timeline for a state of emergency.
Do you mean the state of emergency or for the one that I'm considering?
If we declare one, will there be a timeline on it? No, or yes, or...
Yeah, well, there would be. I think it wouldn't be, it would be difficult to determine now when the termination would be, just because... Sir, go ahead. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
No, and yeah, I understand that, and I hope that it doesn't come to a state where we have to use our staff to enforce people being kept at home.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Using the right things, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've made quite a lot of more notes here, and I thank you all for your comments. Is there anything further on the update from the control group that anyone may like to add? Just wait a moment. Okay, so seeing not, there's no motion or anything from that. That was really just an information item to give you some updates. The next item then is item G. This is the appointment of the deputy clerk, which will be Rhonda Whitmarsh. There is a report on page 12. Is there a mover and seconder for this bylaw?
Councillor Gerard, I move this bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Dalgety, second.
Thank you, Councillor Dalgety. I'm going to go to the clerk. Is there anything you might like to comment on before I go to council for comments?
So yes, to provide some clarity, we currently do not have a deputy clerk on staff. We are actively recruiting for a full-time deputy clerk / communications officer. However, at this time, we thought it was prudent to appoint someone on staff already to be the deputy clerk in case there's a situation where I am not available. Given this current climate, you never know if that could happen. So that's why we thought it was a good idea to have Rhonda Whitmarsh as the deputy clerk.
Okay. Thank you for that. So this is really just to make sure we've got ourselves covered in case we're not able to work with Jean for some reason. I'm going to go through the line here. I can't imagine there'll be too much discussion, but I want to just make sure if anyone has a question, they get to ask that question. Councillor Dalgety, any comment or question on appointing a deputy clerk?
Councillor Dalgety, pass.
Okay, Councillor Ferguson.
No, thank you. I agree with it.
Okay, Councillor Gerard.
Councillor Gerard, I agree.
Okay, Councillor Holmes.
I agree.
Thank you. Councillor Maiden.
No comment.
Deputy Mayor Manelli. Deputy Mayor Manelli.
No questions or comments, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And we have it moved by Councillor Gerard, seconded by Councillor Dalgety. Yay or nay, Councillor Dalgety?
Councillor Dalgety, yay.
Councillor Ferguson, yay or nay?
Councillor Ferguson, yay.
Councillor Gerard, yay or nay?
Councillor Gerard, yay.
Councillor Holmes, yay or nay?
Councillor Holmes, yay.
Councillor Maiden, yay or nay?
Councillor Maiden, yay.
Deputy Mayor Manelli, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you. So that is passed. We have a deputy clerk. Congratulations, Rhonda. So the last item, we would be moving into closed session. So those that are on the call on YouTube will be disconnecting. That the public can't hear the closed session because this is regarding personal matters. Before I look for